Good morning, everybody in the room and online. My name is Tracy Brown, and I hope you were intending to be at the Sunday morning Science of Mind class at CSLDallas, because that's where you are. So if this is not where you were intending to be, you're still here. So the universe must have a bigger, better plan for you to hang out with us this morning. Every Sunday morning at 9:15-ish Central Time, we come together to take a deeper dive into the science of mind. And at the beginning of the month, we also get really excited because we get to walk into this space and see some amazing, amazing art. And this month, our art is being presented by Paula Holland. So if you are on campus right now or coming to campus later today or anytime this month, please check out Paula's art and see which one you want to take home, or maybe you just want to commission something from her. Our purpose in doing this class is to make sure that every week we take a few minutes to dive a little bit more deeply into what Ernest Holmes wrote when he wrote The Science of Mind, and to do our best to understand it at a little deeper level. So it's not just for beginners. I find that whether I am sitting on this stool or whether I am watching on Facebook, that every week I get something out of what we are reading. So, it may be about 4 years since we were at the same place that we are now. And in those 4 years, life has happened. And so we are always getting insights and gaining new information. So today we are going to continue in the chapter on body, chapter 5. And Dr. Petra last week got into form within the Formless, which starts near the bottom of page 100, and went through the top of 101. And so just kind of brief summary. Form within the Formless. Our physical body is like other physical manifestations. The idea of body is an image derived from the fountain of all ideas. And so that little section really reminded us that the formless turns into the form. And in the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about what is form. Form or body is really just the effect. So in the middle of page 101, Ernest Holmes starts a new section within this chapter called Cause and Effect. And I'm going to start in with a little bit of what he wrote, and then I'm going to be asking you, so what does that mean to you? Or what do you think about it? Or what questions do you have? So beginning in the middle of page 101 with cause and effect. Effect is that which did not make itself, but must have a power back of it, causing it to be. All manifestation, all body is effect and is subject to its cause. Take a breath. That is a very short paragraph, especially for Ernest Holmes. It's a very short paragraph, but there is so much there. And so I'm going to read it again, and then I'm going to read the second paragraph, and then we're going to talk about it. Effect is that which did not make itself, but must have a power back of it, causing it to be. All manifestation, all body is effect. all manifestation, all body is subject to its cause. The creator is greater than the creation. Everything we see, touch, taste, feel, hear, or grasp with the physical senses is an effect. Quote from the Bible, "Things which are seen are not made of things which do appear." What we see comes from that which we do not see. Now, there's a part of me that's saying, Tracy, you didn't read anything that wasn't said last week or the week before. It was just said a little bit differently. So, part of me is tempted to just keep going because it's the same thing, right? The intention or the decision is invisible. It's an idea that then, through the creative process, becomes something physical, tangible, or experienced. And that is the effect. That has an invisible cause in back of it, or behind it, or causing it. Sometimes people get a little confused with Ernest Holmes' phrasing of something, but must have a power back of it, causing it to be. A power back of it. And in our human thinking, a lot of times we want to go to like there's something standing right behind it. But that's just a way of speaking that there is a cause. And the other thing that people get sometimes confused about is that the manifestation is subject to its cause. Because maybe when you were in school, you learned to outline or diagram sentences, right? Some of us who are older than a certain age had to do that.
12, older than 12.
I thought you were going to say older than dirt.
That too.
And so it's like, well, what is the subject and what is the verb? But in our spiritual philosophy, you will hear, and you've heard me or Dr. Petra or Carol Merlot or a lot of people talk about in the teaching symbol that we think of the law and we think of the mystery, we think of it as the subjective mind, that we think or set an intention and then it is subject to or it must respond, right? The law must respond. And so the idea or the intention is invisible, and then the universe or the law is subject to that intention to create an effect. So you go from idea to effect or form, or this chapter, which is titled Body. So I'm going to stop because I want to know, before I just keep going and add more, Ernest Holmes begins to build from here. So if you are still questioning body, let's talk about that. Or if you have a way or an example of something that happened that made it really easy for you to remember cause and effect, or idea to body, or thought to form, then I'd like to hear that too. So I'm going to turn to Ryan and ask Ryan to give us instructions for engagement. What are the rules of engagement?
The rules of engagement for this Sunday morning. That sounds like it should be a title of a movie. Well, welcome to everybody. Welcome, Dr. Tracy Brown. Love to have you here with us today. And yes, this is an engaging conversation. And we'd love to hear from you, both here in the audience and all over the globe here online with us as well. And so for the folks here in the audience, the ones I'm waving to right now, you'll be on camera with us. And if you have a question or comment, feel free to raise your hand. For the folks I'm waving to over on this side, you will not be on camera. So we just want to make sure that you guys understand that. And feel free to do the same, but raise your left hand on that side. You guys have that cleared? That's the rules of engagement.
What have I started?
Yes, what have you started?
Oh, no.
Hey, and for those that are joining us online here via Zoom, you can hit the raise your hand icon. I don't think it has a left or right option, so we'll leave you alone. Or you can also put it inside of the chat as well, and I can bring that into the room. And the same goes true for those that are joining us all over the globe on Facebook Live. Feel free to chime in and put your questions and comments in the chat, and I'll bring that into the room as well. And as always, I like to mention I keep the questions as a safe container. Oh, here we go. The rules of engagement have changed. So, as I always mention, I like to keep it as the questions inside of the chat as safe, as anonymous as possible, so we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So I do see we have a couple folks here that are joining us online, so I'll go there first, and then we'll come back to here in the room. So Armando, I'm going to start with you. Armando, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and join us?
Morning, Dr. Trace Brown.
Hey.
So I wanted to share, I think that in 2016, I had a very clear vision and an idea, a concept that I planted a seed. And to be quite honest, at that moment in time, it was more of a leap of faith. It was more of, okay, I'm trusting what I'm learning here at CSLDallas. And as I see it starting to move, and the seed started to grow, and I started to see, and it's like, okay, I guess for me, I wanted to see sort of proof of concept. And so I started to attend vision classes, vision boarding, prayer warriors, all of that to keep elevating so that I would be ready to water the plant when it was time, and to remove myself from it and allow it to do what it needs to do. I learned all of that as I kept showing up to classes and what I've learned, and I've applied it. And the body that came out of that is Cardboard Project that is now touching so many lives. And I had no idea that the body was going to be this in the way the impact it's having in communities and having a ripple effect from just having an idea. And it's just so powerful. And I think for me, what I've experienced is that now that I get it and I understand it and I apply it, it seems like my life gets to be easier to co-create because I have that proof of concept in my brain, I guess you could say. It's the best way I can describe it. But that just gives me more power to continue to co-create and reach more people and impact more people, and not just for me, but for the world. So that's what I have learned, and that's what my experience has been from an idea to body. And thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Oh, and thank you for sharing. So any of us who have been around CSL Dallas for a while know pieces of Armando's story, or if you participate in the class a lot, you may have heard him speak to Cardboard Project before. But Armando, thank you. This is a perfect day for you to share that because of a couple things you said. So this phrase, proof of concept, right, is so powerful because that really is what we are doing when we are using our spiritual practices over and over. We are proving that universal law actually works in our lives. And then a second thing that really jumped out at me is yesterday I was in a conversation and it was similar to what you just said, Armando, about, except you said, right, now it's easier for me to use the power, or I use the power more. And the reality is that the universal power and presence is infinite and unlimited, right? We just tap into it more. because we have more confidence and because we believe that what we choose will manifest. But isn't it funny sometimes I think about, oh wait, I've been wanting that for 3 years. But I'm just now beginning to believe I could have it. I could have had it 3 years ago if I really believed it or if I was willing to claim it. And so, Armando, yes. The third thing and the final thing I'll highlight from what you said is this. So we've been talking about body, and I said it's what we physically experience or, taste, touch, feel, smell, or experience. That's the effect, that's the body. And so I love Armando's example because it wasn't just like, it wasn't something that he could imagine physically, this is what it's going to look like. His idea or his intention was about service. I want to close the gap, right? I want to provide more service to this kind of person or community. And the shape it took, he could not have predicted. But now we can see it. We can see the business. We can see the service being provided to people in different communities. And we can say that's the effect. So you don't always know exactly what it's going to look like, but you're so connected to the spiritual qualities or the attributes of God or the impact that you want to have, that then the shape comes together as it gels. Do you have a second one online?
I do. I'm going to go ahead and ask Marjorie to go ahead and unmute yourself. Marjorie?
Hi, Marjorie.
Hi, good morning. So nice to be here today, Dr. Tracy. I have a question or a comment about cause and effect. And this just kind of came to me as I was reading this again with you today. He's saying that effect is that which makes itself known by what you can see, touch, taste, and so forth. So I'm just curious about, from my perspective, my belief system or whatever, I believe that my spirit, I tend to call it soul, but I think in Science of Mind it refers to it as my spirit. So who I was before I became into this body and who I will be when I leave this body, to me is the same thing, the same being. And from my perspective, even though it is not in a body form, it is still an effect of the cause before it became a body. And it will be actually still that same effect from its cause after I leave this body. I don't know if that's making any sense, but so I guess what I'm saying is that from my perspective, and I know he's not saying it here, but I think I've understood from Holmes in general is that he does believe that our spirit continues on after we leave this body. I don't know if he ever says that or not, but I get that impression. So I guess the creator, I'm subject to my creator even before I become a body and even after I leave this body. Is that making any sense?
Marjorie, you always make sense. So I'm quiet and listening so I can be sure to listen and hear what you're saying and not jump in too soon. So, I'm sorry, can I share one more thing? Sure.
Because I tend to spend at this point in my life, I'm 75 years old, and I've lost many loved ones, and I consider myself to sort of have 1 foot in the other realm already. I spend time with those who have crossed over, and I can communicate with them and sometimes I can even hear their voice. And I also sort of can see myself as who I am and who I will be when I cross over. So I guess that's what from my perspective, that's where this question is coming from, because I feel like the cause and the effect is not necessarily only in the visible realm. It's also in the invisible realm. So that's just kind of the general context of my question.
Interesting.
Beautiful, beautiful. So here's what we teach in Science of Mind. In our Declaration of Principles, and I think it's principle number 3, but it might be 5. But what we teach in our Declaration of Principles is that we believe in the eternality, immortality, and continuity of the individual human soul. And so, or the individual, yeah, I think it says human soul. So, but the immortality, continuity, right, the eternality of each of us is what we teach. And so, Marjorie, you're correct that you've picked up that Ernest Holmes writes about and teaches us that this time that we are experiencing in this human body, in this human series of conditions that we generally refer to as life with the lowercase l, that our human experience is not our total experience. So, Marjorie, yes, before we were in this form, and when we go into a different form, that we have no idea what that will be, that it is one thing. Now, that one thing that is Tracy Brown is an effect of spirit, of the Creator. So I am not an effect of my own thinking, right? I am, each one of us, every mouse, squirrel, the ocean, the mountain, all of it is effect, having been created by Source itself, having been intended by Source itself. And so in Science of Mind, then, we don't spend very much time talking about the before or the after. We teach, here are the principles, the universal spiritual principles, and here is how we can use them while we are in this human form to create a life we love and to contribute to a world that works for everyone. So, Marjorie, great thinking, and as usual, a really great question or comment for us to consider. Thank you, Carmen. Oh my gosh. And so we're going to have one more online before we come into the room, and that gives me a chance. Ooh, this is hot.
Better watch out now. Let that cool down.
It has to cool off a little bit.
And while you're letting that cool down, I'm going to ask Brenda to go ahead and unmute herself online. Brenda, you want to ask your question or comment?
Good morning, Dr. Tracy and community. What a timely topic, and I'm going to build on your answer to Marjorie's question, because in Inward Journey, we're reading the chapter on immortality. And I have no difficulty with the I that I am is immortal, and will continue after this physical body of Brenda leaves. However, if I'm understanding the text correctly in that chapter, our consciousness, which is what maintains our identity, cannot exist without form. And so if I'm reading this correctly, we move from this realm into whatever our next expression is, and they're talking about a body within a body within a body. And so are we always, as our consciousness, embodied in some form, or are there times when the I that is I am is part of the formless between our expressions? Good morning.
Good morning. So,
What class is this?
Yeah.
Advanced Consciousness Studies
Okay.
class, formerly known as Inward Journey, but Advanced Consciousness class. And when we get to the chapter on immortality, that this often comes up, and we won't be there for a while, so I'm glad that we are here now, thanks to Brenda. So here's the deal. Here's where many of us get caught up and confused or just have, some difficulty. It's like when we use the word consciousness, it's like when we use the word capital I intelligence, and in our human thinking, we think capital I intelligence means thinking, means what we understand. In our humanness, we do. The more we study our spiritual philosophy, we understand that intelligence is not like IQ. So consciousness is tricky like that too. When we think that consciousness must have a form like a body, consciousness will continue to exist. We take our consciousness with us in whichever form we are in. That doesn't necessarily mean it's like a dog or a cat or a snake or a fly or a bird or a person. So the thing that we have to work with is the same thing that we work with if we're studying Thomas Troward or if we're studying capital I intelligence. Troward talks about and reminds us to consider that there is intelligence, capital I intelligence, in everything that exists. And people's heads go on tilt when they're like, wait a minute, what do you mean the intelligence of a rock, right? Or the capital I intelligence, well, of a tree. That's usually easier for people because they see the tree grow. But the intelligence, it's just matter operating, if you go to science, right? It's just matter operating at a slower vibration. So, Brenda, consciousness has form, but form is any way that we experience, right? It is the senses that are listed and the experience of life or living. So until we all go beyond this physical body, we won't really be able to describe it.
We're going to have a science of mind class there.
Willie's gonna teach the Science of Mind class for all of the dearly departed, graduated, transformed people who have shuffled off of the mortal coil. So we haven't come to the room yet. Is there anybody in the room who has a comment or question?
That was going to be my question. Here we go.
There's a mic.
And as a reminder, just if you can, help us out by handing the microphone off to others that you see with their hand raised.
I'm Willie, and I think at this point in time in the book, Ernest Holmes is talking about the here and the now and how we experience the world.
Yes.
And the everything that we can see, touch, feel, taste with our senses is form. And it has to have a movement and consciousness behind it for it to pass through the law and become form.
Yes, you are doing a beautiful paraphrase and summary of exactly what Ernest Holmes is trying to explain here.
Yeah, I don't think Ernest Holmes in my experience, doesn't talk that much about what happens after we leave here because we don't know what happens after we leave here.
And we can't prove it in the way that we want to be able to prove the science of the
Right.
universal principles. So that's true too. However, what Brenda is saying is true, and what Marjorie referred to as well, when we get back to the chapter on immortality, which begins on page 371. We're on chapter 5. The chapter on immortality is chapter 23. Whoa. There's a lot between where we are now and where we will be, because in the middle of the science of mind and through about chapter 25, then Ernest Holmes does get into how all of these universal ideas, thoughts, philosophies, and principles apply to the human. And in chapter 5, he's just trying to explain the nature of life itself, the nature of creation itself. So it's really interesting in the sense that, sometimes we want to pull back to, okay, where are we here? But for those of us who have been studying it, it's impossible, and if you're in class right now, it's impossible to separate that from what I'm studying or what I just read, and then to integrate it all. One final comment related to that. So in the original Science of Mind book, Ernest Holmes did have a chapter that dealt with psychic phenomena and the process, and he pulled that out on purpose. And Marjorie, this might be really interesting to you. He did pull it out for the reason that Willie said, that when after 6 years or 8 years, he realized it was distracting people from understanding the actual principles that apply in our human experience. And he didn't want that to be a distraction from understanding the principles because it couldn't be scientifically demonstrated and universally applied. So you've been in the Science of Mind teaching for a while to know that. Anybody else in the room? Comment? Question? Okay. Then I am... Say your name.
My name is Ross, and I would like to be controversial. Although I don't want to be controversial, but I'm going to be.
Maybe.
There is only effect. Is that correct?
No.
How do you possibly come up with creation when everything you think, feel, experience in every way is an effect? Your entire being is an effect. So how can you claim creativity or cause when everything in you and who you are is an effect? I'm done.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to politely respond to that.
Be rude. We know who you really are. Show who you are.
No, so here's the deal. Everything is not effect because effect has to have a cause that creates it. So when you were speaking, you said our thoughts, our body, our blah, blah. Our thoughts are not an effect. Our thoughts are what we are using to, hold on, just listen.
I'm going to hold on.
So
With bated breath.
our thoughts are what we are using to create, right? We go from the invisible to the visible. And so from the invisible to the visible, or from the invisible to the experienced. So a lot of what I think you're referring to as our habitual thoughts, they're the effect of long-term thinking or how we've been socialized. But when we are initiating thought, we are actually going from an idea or the invisible nature of life itself that we are claiming and choosing, and then setting a new cause into motion. Otherwise, it would not be possible for us to change our lives. It would not be possible for us to have agency in our lives. And so the principle itself of spirit or the creator or God or whatever word works for you, creating in the creative process it begins with an idea, intention, choice, decision, and then the universe moves things into alignment with that. We in our human experience are no different from that. It's just that we don't we're not often enough intentional in our choosing. If we were intentional in our choosing, we would recognize that our lives are really an individualized example of what Armando shared with us, that I have this idea, I do my spiritual practice, this is what I experience, and I get these opportunities, and I make choices that are in alignment with that ultimate goal, and now it seems like it's on automatic. Now, the big effect or body is a very successful nonprofit, and the experience of being the executive director and founder of a $1 million nonprofit, right? But it looks like it's all in effect, but it started with what was in back of it. That's what's invisible. Everything else is. Everything else. So if you had said everything else beside the initial intention is effect, I would say yes. But not everything is effect.
Tiny pushback.
Oh, big pushback.
Just tiny.
If you can do it in
3 seconds, I can. This is complicated. Yeah. And if we don't have a way to talk about it, the chances of understanding it and using it effectively border on zero. So if nothing else, this is a very convenient way to talk about it, and we can all share the definitions. And I get it. And like it.
Thank you, thank you. So in the context, Ryan, do we have anybody else urgently online? In the context of everything that has come up today, I do want to bring our attention and our energy to a different kind of celebration. So, Marjorie, I'm really grateful to you for what you brought up, and then also Brenda as well, because we do believe in science of mind, and at CSLDallas on the immortality and the continuity of life. And there is someone who has been a really active participant in the Sunday morning Science of Mind class, and she has left her physical body and moved into her next expression of life. And so I think it is important, because she has been so involved and such a regular contributor to the Science of Mind class, to share with everyone today that during the last week, Connie Williams made her transition. And if you have been participating in class, you know that she's one of the people who almost always has an example to share of how she applied the science of mind principles in her life. And so we love her and we bless her in this next part of her journey. And we often think it's not okay to mourn and to be sad. It is human to mourn and to be sad. The mourning is a representation or a parallel experience to the love and to the engagement. And so we're going to close out our time together with a poem as we think about Connie Williams. Poem is Never Ready. Are you ever ready? Never. To say goodbye seems much too final. You always wish you had time for one more hug, one more joke, one more history lesson, one more email, one more apology, one more I love you, one more Sunday Science Mind class, one more day, hour, or minute to enjoy each other and to share life. Are you ever ready? Never. To say goodbye seems much too final, for no one dies completely when those who love them tell their story, follow their example, learn from their mistakes, celebrate their successes, honor their values, respect their experiences. Remember the good times and appreciate the miracle of life. Are you ever ready? Never. To say goodbye seems much too final, so let's say good life instead. Good life, Connie Williams. And have an amazing week, and we will see you next week right here at the Sunday Morning Science Mind class.